Our next topic will be from Birthe Nielsen from Pistoia. It'll be her first presentation. Yeah, that one. And so what Birthe will tell us about today is, as you know, one of the things that we talked about being really important to is being an active member of the pre-clinical community, and which means lots of collaboration. So we recently extended our collaborations with Pistoia through an MOU to do more projects together. And actually, you're going to see Birthe twice today. First is just to tell you some in general about some of the interesting things going on at Pistoia, and we purposely picked some things that we think have lots of relevance here. And then in our second talk later today, we'll dive into one of those projects.
Yeah, thank you, Lenny. I just want to start off with just a very general overview of the Pistoia Alliance. I don't think I have to explain too much what the Pistoia Alliance is all about, because actually most of you are involved in projects and communities already. But just to remind you that, we are a member-led alliance, that, all the initiative, all the projects, all the communities are initiated and led by the members. And we work under this very unique framework that we have within the alliance, allowing us to do pre-competitive collaboration. What you might not know is that we have, in the past few years, sort of like bundled the projects into these different strategic priorities. And you see them here. So delivering data-driven value at scale and harnessing AI to expedite R&D. Those two are sort of like our traditional type of projects that we have run for the decade and a half that the Alliance have existed now. And so inevitably a lot of our projects falls within these two groups. But we also have members working on accelerated late-stage R&D, sustainability-driven R&D. So we have some projects there. You can actually see the entire portfolio here. So we have more than 20 active projects and communities, and we do have some activities that sort of falls outside of these strategic priorities. So we have bundled those in this other activity group here. But if you look at, for example, this one, where we have our ontologies, our semantic solutions, our fair community, members, they struggle with, they have the same problems, consuming data governance, the how-to. And so these are really good pre-competitive areas, and there are lots of good use cases for the Pistoia Alliance to work with, and that's what we do best. We also have quite a lot of ideas within our ideas pipeline. Not all these ideas will convert into projects. Perhaps 1/3 of them will turn into projects. And again, it really depends on the type of idea. If the problem is a common problem across companies, and then hopefully we can find a common solution. But sometimes, and I've seen that, sometimes we agree on the problem, but can't quite agree on the solution. And I think there was a discussion on metadata as well yesterday. And so that's sometimes why ideas, they don't turn into projects. Also, if it's a one company problem, of course, then we can't progress with it. So I just want to show you a few of the or the FAIR community. Actually, it's the largest community that we have within the Alliance. We have more than 50 active experts, and we have more than 500 people following this community. So it is a very, very large community. They have 3 different work streams here: business value, good practice, and then they have this enabling tools work group. And they do create and maintain a lot of different artifacts and best practice guidance here. And obviously there are some connections to Allotrope. for this working group here. And one of the spin-outs from this working group is the Pharma General Ontology terminology project, because it's not quite an ontology, it's more of a terminology where it's all about facilitating interoperability. It's about creating these set of agreed terms that we can use across companies. So what is the scope for the PGO? Well, the scope is actually the entire pharma knowledge domain. And you can see here the version 1 that's been published is focused really much on early R&D, but the idea is to expand. So if it was an ontology, you would sort of have it as a mid-layer ontology just below BFO, but still above these domain-specific ontologies. So that's sort of the idea with PGO. They don't necessarily go and come up with new terms. They will always try to reuse terms where they already exist. And if you want to get involved with this community, do get in touch with my colleague Giovanni. We have a new idea that's been submitted by Benchlink, and we did talk a lot about converters yesterday, so I don't think I have to say much about this idea here, but with all these converters, the idea is to create like a repository where you can submit these open source codes for these converters. And it's all about trying to establish a framework for not just governance, but also for testing. So having data so that you can test these and even potentially create some GLP certification for some of these converters here. So if you want to get involved with that, do get in touch with my colleague Natalie. And let her know. Obviously, there are crossovers with allotrope because a lot of the converters are ASM, but they could be other file formats as well. I mean, if you're interested in some of these projects within the portfolio, just come and talk to me, and I'm happy to put you in touch with one of my colleagues that can help you. So please do that, because what I really want to do is give you a little bit of a deep dive into one of our ontology projects, the CMC Process Ontology. And we've just seen it in the previous presentation as well. This is really all about creating machine-readable instructions for the CMC processes. So how we make stuff, drug products and drug substances. This project is actually in its third year, and we started in 2024 with a small POC with Crown Point and 4 members supporting the work, and extended last year into a 12-month phase with 5 companies. Where we have CS as our technical vendor, and now we just kicked off phase 3 with 7 companies this year, with both the Hive and CS to help us build this CMC process ontology. Before I explain a little bit what we're doing, I just want to talk about why machine-readable process description matters. And I think we saw it in Chris's presentation with micro and mu. And, when a human reads a process description or a recipe, heat to 85 degrees, adds a predetermined amount of something, charged DI water to the reactor, or are you adding purified water to the vessel? These are easy enough for a human to understand, right? But it's not easy for a computer to understand this. There is a lot of implicit knowledge here, when you look at these words. So the outcome is that it's very difficult to to reuse these recipes, to transfer them across without having a human intervention. Just looking at the term charge here, so here we have one word, but depending on who you ask within the same organization, they would have different definitions of what it means. So if you ask a process engineer, it could be adding a specific amount of the material, it could be adding or increasing the volume. If you ask an electrician, it could be something about it's completely different. And I mean, if you go to finance, it's so you have the same word, 4 different meanings. So which one will our system use? And this is, of course, the reason why when you have IRIs, machine meaning across all sites, across all systems, then things automatically becomes interoperable. You can avoid a lot of human errors when you flow your CMC processes through your enterprise here. So yeah, one set of identifiers that will always be consistent. You can change the label, you can translate it, but the IRI is always remains the same. We are also using the ISO 88 standard for building this ontology here. So if you're not familiar with ISO 88, it's the international standard for batch processes. It's quite flexible. It's implemented differently in different organizations, but it is a very good standard for batch process control. The standard is sort of divided into different modules. So you have the procedural, you have the physical, and then you have the process one. So you have really the how and the where that sums up to the what. What we have been focusing on so far with the CMC process ontology is explaining recipes at a very general level. So ISO 88 breaks down the different levels of information that you need from a recipe, because different groups, different stakeholders need different levels of information from a recipe on how to make something. So we have kept it quite general so far. This is a very enterprise level. This is how you make something, but in theory you can do it at all different manufacturing sites. It is not specific to any materials or equipment or operator, but it's very general. And from there on, you can then start deriving site recipes that will then tell you how you would make something at a specific site. And you then progress to master recipes, which are even more specific to equipment classes and so on. So this is where we want to go this year. We want to sort of like move a little bit from the general recipe level into sites and master specific recipes, where we start putting in those hooks for equipment and material. We don't want to build it out, but we just want to put in those execution context or those hooks so that we can start now at describing recipes to these levels. You of course also have the control recipe, which is the execution model, or this is actually what you did. So this is very specific to your instruments. If you have customized something, it's very specific to the time. Control recipes exist only once, right? Because this is when you execute them, whereas the other recipes they live a little bit beyond that. So yeah, I know we talk about how in theory and in practice, and how in practice you probably won't derive your general to site to master to control, but when you work in an R&D or discovery lab, it looks a little bit different. You you probably start off with a control recipe and then work your way back to a control recipe. So we are very aware of that, and we want this to work in development labs as well. And we work with the working group on ensuring that it's actually usable, not just for manufacturing, but in early development as well. So ISO 88 also breaks down how a process runs. So the process being the overall transformation of your raw material into your product, and it breaks it down into stages, which is like, for example, synthesis, into operations, fill, react, and so on, and finally into the most so the actions, which are very reusable across all the recipes. It's sort of the smallest definable step that you can do. So we have spent a lot of time within the working group trying to agree on okay, so how do we break down unit operations into stage operation actions, and sort of agree on what is a stage, what is an operation, what is an action. And it takes time to agree when you have so many different stakeholders, but I think we have really now been able to break down how you make something into a stage, into a operation, and you can break that into actions as well. So this screenshot here is just something we did in the POC phase with ComPoint, and we then spent a bit more time last year really building out all that stage operation and action. And you probably can't see it in these visualizations here, but it's very hard sometimes to show an ontology. So we made these HTML visualizations so that we could show it to so members could show it internally in how we break things down. So yeah. We are focusing on processes, and we are looking at what's already out there. We're not trying to duplicate anything, and it's very important that we sort of incorporate and that we import what's already exists there. And so when we started off, we were looking at Proco and everything we have used, and also we are importing what Milos and Søren talked about yesterday. So the IOF, the BMEC ontology, which is for biomanufacturing of that's bio, so everything protein, and then we have built out for small molecules. We extended last year to CAR-T and monoclonal antibodies as well. And as I mentioned, spend a lot of time on this PSOA designations. This year we're going to do 3 different things. So we're going to extend the ontology. So we want to have, of course, it's strictly focused on processes, but we want to have all the context, the execution context there as well. So that means that we need to build in these hooks to equipment, material, analytical data, of course, IDMP. We are aware that this is going to be used in federation with all the other ontologies out there. So it's very important to make sure that we align and we are interoperable, of course, with the IOF BMEC as well. So we have spent a lot of time, and we had some great conversation with Milos and his team on aligning how we do things. And one of the things we're doing right now is looking a little bit about there are 2 sides of every process. So you have your plant specification. This is the recipe or the process that always exists. Your SOP, it's there. It can be shared. It can be versioned. It can be copied, and it will always exist. Before and after you execute it. And then you have, that prescribes the batch, what's actually happened. So this is what happens in time. This is the specific event. it's tied into the operator, to the real equipment that you are using and at the site. And it's of course only executed once and recorded once. We looked at, and I think we also mentioned that yesterday, in discovery labs, it's not so temporal or sequential as, when you have your manufacturing and you just strictly follow your process. In manufacturing, it's very easy and things runs a very sequential, temporal way. But when you are in the discovery lab, it's really all over the place. Sometimes your plant specification is not even written down. I think that was also mentioned yesterday. It just exists in your head, right, in the scientist's head. But it's still important that we now try to document these things and try so we can track these decisions that are made. Because often, you do create these control recipes at this level that you then and work your way back to the general recipe level here. So we have. We're just looking at a little bit about how rigid we have made it, enforcing this strict hierarchy on stages, operations. And so we are making a few adjustments just right now this week on actually making that flexible so that somebody can have something as an operation and somebody can have it as a stage instead, perhaps to give more flexibility, to align better with IOF and BMA. And so there are a few terms that we need to combine, and we are just, sort of finishing that these weeks. And that means that actually, end of this month, we are going to hit a big milestone. We are going to release version 1 of this ontology, which, it's been a few years, but, this will be our first version that we will release, and we are super excited about that. So that will be this month, and it will be for the Pistoia Alliance members to use, and then with a small delay, it will be available to everybody. We obviously want this to be adopted across the entire industry, so for broad adoption, we would need to have something open sourced. So once we release it, we hope everybody will give us some feedback on it that we can use and improve. And whilst we do that, we are continuing to work on, as I said, these 3 different areas. We call it block 1, which is to sort of extend the ontology and add that execution context and put in those hooks that we need. Block 3 is our validation. I mean, we spend a lot of time ensuring that things are grounded in real-world R&D. And so we do a lot of manual comparing, your process, your recipes with what we have in the ontology. And so that's very important to do that. A second thing we want to do this for this phase is that we want to create a vendor-neutral data schema or model so that we can actually use this ontology for some of these use cases, tech transfer and so on. So we are going to start with this month. So we need to have some sort of JSON-based schema, and that, very well could be an ASM. We have a lot of use cases, for example, in discovery labs you run, I don't know, hundreds of experiments in a bioreactor each week, and you get that in an ASM. So now we just need to tie that back to the process or the instance of the process that generated that data. So we are going to be working on that and hopefully have something at the end of the year that we can show. So that is obviously a very obvious opportunity to collaborate with Allotrope because it would be good to have an ASM. I think Cameron from Cromwell also presented this at one of your meetings a few years back, because we did in our initial phase look at where are these touch points for CMC and Allotrope. We don't need to reinvent anything. We want to, use things in federation. So we looked a little bit about, okay, where are those touch points where the CMC and allotrope, analytical, they overlap. And so for a CMC, you probably don't need, all the data that an AFO or allotrope or the time series or other dimensional data sets that you would get. Maybe you just need a daily aggregated value, a statistical value, or something like that. So obvious touch point would then be instances like a sample idea or average value or something like that, or something a measured quality attribute measurements, the daily value there as well. So these could be some obvious connection points. We had actually a meeting in London last month where we did sort of also part of what we're doing with the Hive, looking at, I wouldn't call this a recipe, but part of a process description here, and trying to actually tag it or annotate it with our ontology, and especially breaking it down into the process, stage, operation, and action. And I mean, it was just such an eye-opener to have people to come and do it. I think, we learn a lot when we do these exercises, because it's not just about adding terms. We're talking a bit about using, AI to just add terms, but I don't think that's the right way or necessarily, because, if you have too many terms, it gets really confusing. And I think we saw that. Do you need stage? Do you need prepare? Maybe we need both, maybe we don't, but I guess it's better not to have too many terms. So these exercises are quite useful, and we're definitely going to repeat that in the future as well. Yeah, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thank you.